Thank you for joining us wherever you are. This podcast episode is brought to you by the Old Ways Actual Play team. This actual play uses the 7th edition Call of Cthulhu tabletop role-playing game rules by Chaosium. This actual play is performed by adults and in an adult setting. While we try very hard to stick to language for all ages, listeners should know that this podcast may include mature themes. All content, including names, places, events, companies, and etc., that may bear resemblance to entities living or dead, is strictly coincidental. My name is Michael Diamond, and for tonight's game, I will be your keeper. Thank you for joining us again on another episode of the Old Ways Podcast. I am your keeper, Keeper Michael, and we will return to Horror on the Orient Express, where we return to Trieste for perhaps a bit of investigation, a bit of clue digging, and who knows what else chicanery will get underfoot here. And so, at the top of the show, I would like to thank all of our listeners and our Patreon supporters. We truly appreciate all of your shares, your reviews. Keep them coming because the cast loves having all of that wonderful feedback as well. Speaking of the cast, we're going to begin with introductions. To my right.
Hello there, this is Mike, and I play James Robert Fraser, who is about to embark on a nice bracing walk to clear the cobwebs from his mind.
Good to get out and move the body as you do, right? Get out and get out into the air, and perhaps have some clarity of thought will come to you.
Absolutely. Moving bodies is a good thing.
I agree. To your right.
Hi, this is Rena. I play Lady Elisabeth Fitzroy, and I'm just glad to see that the city is still in one piece. More or less.
More or less. Your fellow investigators in one piece, that's a totally different story. But I'm certain that Paul will have them in the right treatment plans for the future. At the end of the table.
Hello, this is Giles, and I'm playing Simon Griffith, and I am learning Greek.
Yes, you've decided to sort of sit in today and recuperate and probably do your best not to pick up any stray weapons fire, and also learn Greek, which is just an excellent idea in my mind. So I fully and wholeheartedly agree with your determination to learn such a wonderful language. And to Mr. Griffith's right.
Hi, I'm Miranda, and I play Maggie Bellinger, and perhaps I'll soon make the list of things that are hazardous to Richard's trousers.
I think that's a totally reasonable plan. And undoubtedly, I think the percentage is fairly high, but I will ask the math professor himself. So, last but most certainly not least.
I'm Martin, and I'm playing Richard Courtenay, and he's looking forward to trying out his other device.
More on that later. So we raise the curtain tonight with the group going about Trieste. The Boro winds today are reasonably strong, although not overwhelming. And so those of you who have experienced them before, some of you experienced them way too closely and upon arrival, you are not feeling as concerned about them when you first leave the hotel, but you do sort of preternaturally grasp for those wires or chains or ropes that are along the walkways here because they just make the travel so much easier. So the group had talked about going to a local cathedral and perhaps a few other stops along the way. Upon exiting the hotel, you notice that Paul fairly quickly diverts from the group. So he says he's going to make the best opportunity of the daylight and get to a local hospital and talk about a brace. And so I guess I would ask the investigators where specifically they're going to go today. So
Mr. Fraser would like to go and have a little look at the cathedral, partly out of an interest in the architecture and design and possibly the paintings and that within it, but also with regard to the fact that places of worship seem to be figuring fairly prominently in their investigations thus far. And he's got a little bit of an ulterior motive in mind for going to the hotel specifically with Maggie, because he is aware that she has some sort of a sixth sense when she gets close to these items, the simulacrum. There is definitely, he can't deny that there is definitely some sort of peculiar connection between her and them, and he wonders if perhaps they take a tour around the cathedral, then she might potentially feel some sort of attraction to another section of this creation, whatever it might be. This marionette, whatever exactly. He's still not exactly sure what it is. He knows it's a sort of a multi-sectioned humanoid figure, but quite what its purpose is, is a mystery.
It is a mystery, and her connection with the simulacrum is also at least a little bit a mystery. She has occasionally delved into the story of the Comte visiting her, but it's hard to tell what the truth is of that story. It's still a little gray. Perhaps she hasn't told you the whole thing. Perhaps she knows more, or maybe even more true to the point, it's simply a bit of intuition on her part as to where these pieces are. Whatever case may be, the cathedral is probably a fine stop.
He's also aware that Winckelmann was buried in the graveyard beside the cathedral from the research that they did at the library the previous day, and I'd like to take a little look at that as well.
And Lady E is going along on this journey for two reasons. One, to keep an eye on Maggie so that she doesn't fall into trouble again. And two, because she's aware from maps and things that the museum is very close to the cathedral, and she didn't actually get a chance to look inside the museum thanks to some Bifez gentleman who decided to shoot at her. So, might be a good time to take a look.
It is reasonable to want to go and look into both a museum of history and of art. There's probably quite a few things in there you might be able to garner for your investigation. Okay, so I guess the ultimate question is, museum or cathedral, which one comes first?
Well, I suppose quickest answer to that question is which one would we pass on the way to the other one?
Well, just looking at your map, you'll notice going up from your hotel, walking sort of south along the coastline here, you're going to run into the museum first. Unless you knowingly and sort of purposefully alter your path to intersect where the cathedral is.
Your ladyship, Miss Ballinger, from the layout of the city, we'll be passing the museum on the way to the cathedral. Shall we pay a visit to that in the first instance?
Yes, that was part of my plan, Mr. Fraser, considering I didn't actually get a look inside when I went with the professor, and considering our research, we might have reason to find some of Winckelmann's things perhaps inside, or at least some more information to lead us to where we might find them. And if you choose not to stay at the museum, I'm quite happy to wander around on my own. I can spend many happy hours in a museum.
Stopping at the museum sounds perfectly fine to me as well.
Well, let's play it by ear and see how the land lies when we arrive there, and I'll either leave you two ladies to enjoy the museum pieces, or perhaps I'll peruse them alongside you. So
the three of you make your way through the windy streets of Trieste, utilizing handholds when you can. You're all sort of bundled up a little bit from the wind. It's not so much the cold at this point, but it is definitely the wind, which is dipping those temperatures further and further. The museum is, quite simply, a shelter from the wind. It is nice hardwood floors, sort of beautiful shelves, pieces of artwork here that are displayed up on the walls, and some pedestal statuettes that have been done. You get a nice mix of not only Italian pieces here, but a little bit of French, but then also something perhaps a little bit more Mediterranean here as well. You get a nice diverse, just as you're walking in, a pretty nice selection to peruse. So to your left, Lady Elisabeth, there is a fairly sizable Egyptian and Greek collection too. And so while not your aim, it is rather striking to see those pieces and hard to deny. Perhaps a few moments won't hurt to inspect them.
Definitely take a slight detour.
And for you, Miss Bellinger, I think probably one of the things you find most compelling here, at least straight away, is the Roman collection that they have. And they have an awful lot of, we would say, goddess statuary here. It's not all the male-dominated Pantheon pieces. There's an awful lot of things here between those sort of ancient collections that exist something more. And you have the museum before you. The curator is here, or the museum's staff are here, and they are available should you so need them.
Well, I think I would ask the curator, once I've had a little look around the Egyptian section, if there's anything of interest on a fairly famous former resident by the name of Winckelmann. Heard that we could see some of his private collection at the museum.
The attendant nods, says, Herr Winckelmann was a benefactor here of the museum, someone who supported us for many years through his money that was left the museum. I'd be happy to show you some of his things.
I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you for your help.
They take you to a corner portion of the first floor, and you see a display cabinet. It's a rather wonderful thing. They turn an interior light of the cabinet on. Lighted cabinets, especially for this space, you were probably not expecting that. And so you see a beautiful inlaid wooden box, and it's lined with velvet. It holds 7 medallions, 4 on the top row, 3 on the bottom. They depict varying historical scenes. You see the sacking of Troy. You see one that has Caesar's face on it. You see one that has been stylized in what you believe is a representation of Cleopatra. There's all sorts of different personalities on them. There's a card in the cabinet. It looks like it's written in Italian. You're not certain what it says. You see Winckelmann's name written by it.
Could you turn to the curator? Could you tell us what the card says? My Italian is a little on the basic side, though I'm learning.
Of course. They pick out, sort of kneel down just a little bit by the card and say, these medallions were once owned by Herr Winckelmann, and they were acquired by the museum in 1910. The medallions were left to us through that act by gentleman Marcus Terramona, and the museum has had them ever since.
I heard poor Mr. Winckelmann was killed over these medallions. It's all quite tragic, really. What a horrible thing.
It is. We are happy to have them, and so they serve as a testament to his generosity and his good work.
Did he make these himself?
It's not certain, truly, but he did favor them for much of his life. We were lucky to secure them from the Terramona family.
Wonderful, thank you.
The curator nods and says, if you need anything else, just please inquire. And then she sort of leaves you in the space there.
Grazie. So, Mr. Fraser, we have a name.
Indeed, your ladyship, yes. If I'm not very much mistaken, this Marcus Terramona may very well be a descendant of the Giovanni Terramona we saw in the information from the library. And if there are papers and a diary, that may give us a lot more information if we can get access to it.
Miss Bellinger, give me a spot hidden roll, if you would.
Oh, I certainly can. That is a 21 under 41.
Ooh. Okay, so that's a standard success, yes?
Mm-hmm.
So you notice something a little strange. You notice this display case that the two of them are looking at. And at first, okay, so the medallions are cool and all, sure. But one thing that no one seemed to have mentioned is that the second row here has just the slightest depression on the right-hand side where it almost looks like there should be an 8th medallion here, but it's missing.
Do either of you happen to notice that one medallion is missing?
Really? What gives you that idea?
Well, look, if you follow the medallions here, there's a spot where another one should be. You can see it's slightly indented here.
Fascinating.
Yeah, she's spot on with that, Mr. Fraser. Their wear on that nap there of the velvet. She's right. There should be an 8th medallion.
Good Lord. I wonder if it has gone missing recently, or is there any way of telling from looking at this whether it looks like, is this under glass? Is it okay, so dust wouldn't have settled on it or anything like that. I'm going to have a little look at the case that they're in and see if I can see if it's hinged and if it appears to have been tampered with recently. If maybe it's, I would imagine maybe it's locked because these must have some value to them.
So if you would give me a hard spot hidden roll,
I will do my very best.
I can give you a little bit more information about the case.
Okay. Let me just see now. My spot hidden is quite good. Fingers crossed. That, I believe, 16 is an extreme spot hidden.
So 2 things are true about this case. One, it was handmade. What I mean by that specifically is that it was made to hold these medallions. There's nothing else in this case except this tray that sits at a 45-degree angle, which holds this inlaid wood velvet-lined box. And lights have been made for the interior to sort of light up the space and to be able to show the great detail on these medallions. The second thing that is true is that it has a hinged side, not top. And that hinged side sits a bit against the wall. And so you would have to move the case out to get to that hinge to even open the box. And by the capped feet of this cabinet, that would be, it would not be impossible per se. It can't be too heavy, maybe 20 or 30 kilograms at most. But the issue will be is that it would create an awful wreck for anyone, and an awful sound for someone moving this case. You'd have to pick the whole thing up if someone were to try to tamper with it.
I was going to look on the floor and see if there are kind of scrape marks where the feet have been dragged along.
You do see very faintly on the wood here, on the back, so the back left leg closest to the wall, you see that there is a sharp, almost 60-degree curve, as if it had been moved previously, and that back leg dug into the wood just ever so slightly. Most people would never recognize that, but for someone who is as fastidious as you are about how a house is kept, a scratch on a wood floor is noticeable for you.
All right, so is it like a kind of a parquet floor or something like that? Okay.
Yep.
All right, and does it look recent? Is it a fresh scratch? Is that possible to tell with an extreme spot in there?
It is not a fresh scratch.
Okay. So it was a wee while ago that somebody has clearly removed this medallion, and it's not been noted, or nothing's been done about it by the museum staff.
Not openly, no.
Not openly, yeah. So yes, it appears that somebody has moved the whole case in order to get to this, and it must have made some noise as well. So it doesn't look to have been done recently, though. I wonder.
Well, perhaps he was killed for that one in particular. Or if perhaps the family chose not to provide all 8.
Well,
either way, I do think perhaps we can clear up that bit of the mystery by speaking to the family. Did they provide 7, or did they provide 8?
Well, could we also perhaps notify the museum staff? They would know if there should be 8.
Well, it certainly looks, from what I can tell looking at this, it looks as though there were 8 here, somebody has moved the case and removed one and then placed the case back into place.
Why did the curator not notice that there were only 7, or at least mention that there had been an 8th, but one was missing?
May have not thought it to be important, or they may not know that the one is missing.
Perhaps we can ask her, and if she doesn't know, then when we speak to the family, perhaps they might know what the 8th one should look like.
Yes, precisely. I
Most curious.
That's a sound suggestion, Your Ladyship. I think the best way to know whether or not somebody knows something is to ask them.
You don't say, Mr. Fraser.
I do say, Your Ladyship. I'll have a look around, see if I can see this museum curator that was we were speaking to earlier on.
Yeah, they're at the front desk, sort of helping some of the other people who are coming in to see the museum. They're making sure that they have what they need. They give you their attention if you stand there for just the minorest of wait. Yes, sir.
Oh, I'm terribly sorry to bother you again. And I'll kind of have a quick look just to see if we've kind of got a wee private moment.
Yeah.
I couldn't help but noticing that the medallions that you have there appears to be one missing. Was there a theft in the museum?
Oh, not that I'm aware of.
Oh, really?
The medallion case that was given us by the family for the museum to display, that this is how we received it.
Oh, I see. I must have misunderstood what I was looking at. It looked to me as though the case had been tampered with.
Oh, not that I know of.
Can I make a psychology roll to see if she's just kind of upholding the museum's reputation and not admitting that somebody had been in to steal stuff?
You absolutely can.
My psychology is 52. Reasonably good reader of people. Oh, 53. I'm going to spend a point of luck to make that a normal success, I think. Just 1 point of luck. I can spare that.
It's in short supply these days. You get a fairly good read of the curator, and you think that they probably know more than they're saying, but you don't get any malicious intent by it. You rightly ascertain, you think, that they're likely trying to preserve the reputation of the museum, especially given Winckelmann's, his reputation here. They don't want people to think there was any sort of funny business with his 7 medallions suddenly having been 8 originally.
I think I will let that go for the moment. I won't press the matter. But I'll thank the curator for their assistance, and I'll head back over to Lady Elisabeth and Miss Ballinger.
Before you go, the curator sort of offers. The family also left a sizable collection of books.
Oh,
that Winckelmann had given them.
Oh, fascinating.
Would you be interested in reading through them?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, please. They are in Italian or English or German?
Most of them were transcribed by someone here in town. We have versions in Italian and in English.
Oh, splendid. Yes, if they are available for viewing, then that would be very acceptable. Thank you very much indeed. Much appreciated.
There's a small reading room. I'll go and collect them. She sort of points across the museum floor to, there's a series of 3 doors that look like private reading areas.
Marvelous. Yes, we'll be over there then, and we'll see you momentarily.
Wonderful. She steps her out behind the desk and goes into a back room.
I'll head over to the others and give them the good news.
Books. There's books here.
The leadership.
Marvelous.
And I believe this curator is going to make your day. Now, the other thing I should note as well, it's clear to me from speaking to the curator that, the museum claims that the this particular display came to them in the condition that we see it, but I have a very strong suspicion that there may have been a theft at some stage in the past that the museum don't want to be public knowledge for fear of loss of reputation and like. I didn't wish to press the matter with her, but I don't know if either of you would like to perhaps speak to her and see if you can gain a little more information about the true nature of exactly how that particular coin came to be missing from the collection.
Perhaps we should do some reading first, Mr. Fraser, because if I know what coin is missing or what metal is missing and what it looks like, I might be able to be armed with more information to press her with.
Very good, Your Ladyship. What was, actually, that's a very good question. What was on the coins? What design was on the coins? So
the coins have various designs from history. So that could be anything from Troy. It could be anything. It's basically ancient Greek and ancient Roman, also some ancient Egypt. But all of them, for the most part, either celebrate one of two things. Either they celebrate a building project, like the pyramids, or they celebrate a culture which was known for building things. The Colosseum, Roman culture, that sort of thing. That seems to be the through line that you see, the theme,
right?
Anyway, which makes sense because Winckelmann's his thrust in life was architecture.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Is there any way, from looking at them, does there seem to be any kind of sequence? Maybe it might even be out of order sequence, because if one has been stolen, this is the thing that's really puzzling Fraser at the minute. Why would you only steal one? Because it would be noticed to be gone regardless. It's not like, you steal one and hope nobody notices and you get away with it. Why would you only steal one and not more than one? What was special about that one? And is there any way of telling from the ones that are remaining what the one that's missing might possibly have had on it?
I think it's too big of a leap of logic right now. You don't have enough facts yet, but it is a good question. Can you find the answer? That's the next one.
So presumably there's some sort of a building theme to it, though, in some way, shape, or form.
I would say that the eras end about 12th or 13th century. That's about the earliest, quote unquote, that you get. Right? That's the closest to where you are right now. So just judging that, maybe it's something in the 14th or 15th century that was built.
Oh, right. Okay. So it's like building through the ages kind of thing, maybe on the coins. Okay.
You all get led to a small reading room with a table, a couple of chairs, and a stack of 3 or 4 books. And these appear to be leather bound, probably about 3 to 4 inches high, and a series of volumes. It looks like they're marked 4, 5, 6, 7. And the curator says the same family, the Terramona family, dedicated these books along with Winckelmann's medallions. If you'd like to have a read through them, perhaps they can give you some additional information on him, or perhaps she confesses that she has not read them. The museum has an awful lot of books in its collection, and so if you are interested, then she encourages you to enjoy the museum and even offers you tea.
I will take tea and read some books.
So, Mr. Fraser, this looks like an opportune time to go check out a cathedral.
I was just thinking that, yes. Books are very, very much more her ladyship's domain. I can certainly carry them and make sure they are aligned perfectly in sequence on a shelf, but sorting through them for vital information is that's not so much his thing.
So for you, Lady Elisabeth, this is going to be a gargantuan read to try to do alone. That would be, of course, unless Miss Ballinger wanted to assist you with it.
Well, I was about to say if we split the reading, then we can get through it faster, but I also don't know if Mr. Fraser wants to take the Maggie dowsing rod with him.
Well, he will ask. Miss Ballinger, what is your preference? Would you like to take a turn about the cathedral with me, or would you rather...
2 minutes.
Would you like to take a turn about the cathedral with me, or would you rather stay here and go through the paperwork with her ladyship?
The cathedral sounds quite interesting, but Lady Elisabeth, do you need our assistance in the work here? There's a saying, I believe, about many hands and work and such.
Yes, it would be helpful to have some assistance. There's quite a lot of reading material, and even with my speed, I don't think I could quite get through all of it in one day. But it's up to you, of course, Miss Bellinger. I wouldn't want to infringe on your walkabout time.
Oh no, if you think this is important, then I'd be happy to stay with you. Perhaps there's more...
I do.
Clues in the pages?
I do think it's important.
I will choose to stay with Lady Elisabeth.
Well, then, I will bid you adieu for the time being. Shall I come back here later on and catch up to see how you're progressing?
Yes, we could compare notes.
Do you say that there were 2 or 3 reading rooms side by side?
Mm, yes.
I think Fraser would like to, very briefly, because he's become rather paranoid, just have a look in the other reading rooms to see if there's anybody in them.
Okay. The reading room directly next to the one Lady Elisabeth and Maggie are in is empty.
Okay, I'll if I open the door and see them in there, I'll just make my apologies and head on my way to the cathedral.
Very good, sir. So back at the hotel, Professor, you have about, at this point, halfway or so fashioned the finishing of this device, this treatment device, and you hear a soft knock on your door.
Yes?
Professor, it's Paul. I was wondering if we could take a look at the bandages, maybe.
Yes, give me a moment. And Richard will just sort of tidy things away a little bit.
Right, so when you come to the door, Paul is doctor bag in hand, and he's looking reasonably positive. I've managed to secure a nice brace for Simon at the hospital.
Ah, yes, he did appear to be somewhat beaten up, but how is his leg?
I fear it's worse than many understand. The ankles, you understand, damage to them is detrimental, and especially someone of his size, when they're harmed or when they're injured, the ligaments inside them become loose, and it can be very difficult if it doesn't heal properly. I'm truly hoping that the brace will help him a little bit, at least keep it straight, because, well, we all know he's not going to stop working or being, I don't know, this group's punching bag sometimes, it feels like.
Yes, indeed. Well, that's good news. I mean, I hope he mends.
I do too. So if you would, should we check on your wounds, perhaps?
Oh, yes, of course, yes.
It smells a little strange in here.
I know.
Electrical fire?
No, I don't think so. Yes, we, did anybody tell you we spent a most unusual evening at a farmer's? You must have seen all over Simon. There was sort of strange herbs and like a clay-like substance. Yes, I have no idea what I smell of, but I'm sure it's not nice.
Well, this hotel does have a bath, and if you don't mind me saying so, I'm certain that Maggie wouldn't mind if you took a bath. She seems awful sweet on you, Professor.
Yes, I'm afraid I'm running out of clothes at quite some rate of knots. I'm going to need some more. Everything I have seems to be either shot through or ripped.
I was thinking about that. I was sort of wondering if maybe we could find a tailor who could perhaps get you something a bit more reinforced.
Right.
Like a material backing for your trousers or your jackets that could stand up to the rigors and the torture you seem to put your clothes through.
I can't walk around in a suit of armor.
Oh no, nothing so medieval, of course. But perhaps something that we look into.
Well, yes. I suppose. I have no idea if Kevlar was invented at this time.
It was not. But
damn it.
What he talks about is a material you've not heard of before, at least not readily, and that's denim. It might be possible. Well, in America, denim is worn out west, where they do a lot of farming and cattle raising, and it's made to hold up to that sort of stress. The seams and some of the pockets are rivet reinforced.
Right. I don't have a massive problem with my pockets. It's more bullets that are the issue.
Perhaps we'll think on that a little bit more. Very well. Take off your shirt, please.
Richard will take off his shirt.
You see Paul do a double take as always. I still can't get past what's gone on with your skin. The geometric nature of it is...
Yes, I know. I studied it at quite some length, as you can imagine.
I can. Paul's medicine roll is a 38. And so, Professor, you're going to heal an additional hit point today.
That's good. That's 5. That's still pretty low, but I'll take it.
He says, I'll come and check on you later this evening, and perhaps there'll be a way we can make sure that you're mending well. It might take a few days for us to get you back in proper working order. But Fraser did tell me that it was a pretty harrowing experience there at the grotto.
Yes, I was shot at again. I was only shot at the morning before in the garden outside the museum. That was the same fellow again.
What's happened to him?
Well, he doesn't exist anymore. He was killed.
Killed? Paul looks shocked.
Yes.
By whom?
I believe he fell and hit his head against a rock.
By accident? Well, the grotto is dark.
It's worth pointing out at this point that in Richard's mind, this is a perfectly reasonable story because at some point on his way down, he no doubt hit his head on the ground on a rock. So it's a factual statement. It's not the whole truth, but it's not untrue either.
What you're saying is Richard is rationalizing what happened to the befezed man. So
he hit him on the head with a rock, and then he fell down and hit his head on a rock with the full force of him falling such a distance onto the floor. Ground, rock.
That's a 0.6 on my psychology roll. Paul sort of tilts his head just a little bit and says, I'm sure that there's more to the story, but what's important, Professor, is that you're here and not there, right?
Not quite, yes. We all got out unscathed. Relatively speaking, we're all alive.
Well, there's a couple of holes in Maggie that might argue with that point, but she's somehow moving around the city again. She's a wonder.
Yes. Yes, isn't she?
I do wonder if the simulacrum is having some sort of effect on her in that regard.
Yes, I was pondering the same thing myself. Maybe that sort of... I'm afraid it might not be healing her, but instead giving her some sort of, false energy. Maybe she's borrowing from places that she shouldn't, and then the simulacrum allows that. I'm worried it might have some permanent, lasting effect. Yes.
I talked with Mr. Fraser about this in some regard this morning, actually. And in a manner of speaking, do you think maybe that we could all look at this as not a fateful and terrible outcome, but perhaps this is all very good? Why can't good things happen to these people? You, this group. It could be that Maggie's connected with something that others haven't. She's benefiting from it.
Right. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on how you would determine whether it was a good thing or not. I mean, have you studied it and its effects?
I haven't, unfortunately, been given an opportunity to study both Maggie and the pieces together, but of course, as a man of science, I'm very much interested to do so.
Yes.
I mean, Miss Bellinger and I met for something more in regards to her recovery from what happened in Venice. And I've given her a treatment plan that I think will be somewhat effective for what's going on. It's something we'd used at Charrington before. But perhaps there is some credence to studying both her and the simulacrum pieces together in the same space. And just to see what effects that they have on her.
I don't think she's a lab rat, but...
Oh, no, I wouldn't say that at all. No.
No harm in observation, but I certainly wouldn't want to put her through any trials or tests or anything of that nature. I think that would be highly inappropriate. Unethical.
Observation was my first step.
Yes. Yes, maybe the last as well.
I think that's fair. I would rather have Maggie guide the treatment process anyway. It's her body, don't you think?
Well, I mean, as a member of the medical profession, you have a duty to do what's best for your patient. That's not necessarily always the wishes of the afflicted.
You are quite right. I think the time that we've had an opportunity to spend together since Charrington has shown me that Maggie is a free spirit. She's very much interested in experiencing new things, and I would think that observing alone, she would be willing to at least entertain. It might even be easier for her to do if you were there with her.
Yes, possibly. I mean, in terms of her judgment, you remember Venice?
I do. And we've had a chance to talk about it, Professor, and I think maybe you should understand something a little bit better.
Right.
What happened to her in Venice you had a hand in, you understand.
Right.
By the bridge, the Rialto. And you can hear Paul's tone change. His voice deepens. He gets very direct with you. I'm not interested in sorting over who's to blame, but what she saw in that river was pointed out by you. And so her affliction afterwards, hence, could be laid at your feet.
It could. I fail to see the point that you're arriving at.
What I'm arriving at is she had afterwards a very difficult experience. She awoke into a different personality. And while I have been able through just after a few sessions with her, really talks, to get her to a place where she is not, as she was before, attempting to hold divine dominion over everyone that she was around, that relief is temporary. That person, the personality there that believes that they walk on this earth to be the earth's divine being, it's there. It's still in her. It's just being soothed.
I'm not quite sure I understand. Are you suggesting that that's always been there and the rivers have woken that, or was that imbued by the river?
I don't believe it was the river at all. I believe it's what she saw in the river. I believe that her brain was not prepared to understand what she saw, and it awoke something inside of her to protect herself, and that being a sort of superimposed personality over who we know.
Right. And what is it you think she saw?
I don't know, but have you considered having her camera developed?
No. Have you not discussed that with her yourself?
I have not. I would rather her not see the image that is on that film.
All right.
Now, I'm going to go and check on my other patient. I wish you the best of day, of course. And should any observation of Miss Bellinger and the simulacrum be in order, I would hasten to think that you would be first on the list of people to be there, yes?
Well, indeed. And just, sorry, if you would indulge me for another moment. I mean, do you have any advice or opinions on how we can better help Maggie?
Well, certainly. You could not take Miss Bellinger into highly stressful situations where she might be exposed to people or entities from the beyond. I think that's the easiest way for me to put it, as fantastical as that sounds. What Maggie needs is perhaps a few years of a calm existence somewhere, which is likely the one thing she will not get.
No. It was just your suggestions of perhaps observing both her and the simulacrum together made me think that you had I don't know, a theory or some ideas on maybe how we could get it off her or something like that. Some.
He seems almost a little crestfallen when you mention that. I have been thinking at great length along our trip, Professor, about such an issue. She seems so tied to them, almost as if there's something deeper between her and these pieces. I don't understand the connection. I don't know if anyone does.
No. Right. Richard's confused. He's taking an approach that she should be left alone, she's going to take years to heal, and she shouldn't be anywhere near any of this stuff. And in a previous breath, he was very much about, I read that as experimenting with Maggie and the simulacrum. So Richard's confused as to what the hell this guy's motives are. I don't think Richard knows what to say to Paul now, so I think he's going to have to leave it and get back to him later.
When there's enough of a silence between the two of you, Paul turns to leave.
Mm.
He gives you a simple nod and says that he'll speak with you later, and heads down the hall to talk to Simon. So Simon, in the depths of your Greek learning and research, you are visited probably about midday or so with a tray of food in the hands of Paul, who comes to check on your wounds and to see how you are getting along.
Afternoon, Paul. Simon will be sitting up at a table because he doesn't want to have his legs stiffen too much laying down in bed.
Oh, you're up.
I thought it best that I not allow my leg to stiffen too much. And I've got some work to do here. We're going to be coming up on the Balkans soon. So I'm boning up on my Greek here.
Well, it is a book by many, I would imagine. And is it true that you're taking the train all the way to Constantinople?
That's what I understand.
I would perhaps suggest some Turkish as well. And be mindful of when you speak Turkish or Greek around those, given the war and all.
That's a fair point, sir. Thank you. Question for you then. Is Turkish distinctly different from Arabic then?
Yes, they are different languages. Although there might be some carryover given the basis of the languages.
I don't think I could go to a library for one of these. I'm wondering if they have any kinds of... Is there a bookstore around here, you think?
Possible. You might even find some stuff at the museum. But before you go wandering off anywhere, Simon, I want to test this brace on you.
I would prefer to, and I also am quite sure I do not want to wander off by myself.
I wouldn't imagine so. You take a chair or a stool or something like that and sets it up so you can put your leg up. Well, so how is the Greek going?
I think I'm getting somewhere. I'm trying to translate a piece that I found with Dr. Smith, and I think it will be important once we arrive there. I've been working on it for a bit.
All right. He fits the brace to your leg after checking out the wound itself. The compression it gives is at first very, very uncomfortable. It's not pain per se, but it just feels like putting a compression brace around something that you have never had to use before. And so your foot feels like there's a big clamp around it. But afterwards, there does seem to be a lot more, a lot more sturdiness to your footing now. It doesn't feel like your ankle wobbles as much anymore, but there's still internal pain from the ligaments and the bones.
So at this point right now, Simon is not going to collapse if he puts weight on that leg, but he's definitely going to be moving slower or have a slight limp of some sort.
You're very concerned about running or even climbing a ladder and having to put and shift the weight. Now, you know that you know your body will heal after a time, but will it heal fast enough for what the group needs? That's hard to say.
Well, on the plus side, Simon won't have to carry Richard for a while.
Well, on the plus side.
Thank you, Paul. I appreciate this. I appreciate what you've done.
Of course. I confess I don't know a ton of Greek. Maybe a few words. I was mostly a Latin study, of course, in school. But happy hunting, and I'm going to get back to my own studies.
All right, Paul. Thank you again. Are you going to be checking in later today then, or will I see you tomorrow?
I'll check your wounds now, and then we'll just make sure before bedtime that you haven't, you don't need any further adjustments.
All right, thank you.
Ooh, Paul rolled a 69.
Nice.
So, given that is under his medicine score, you will regain an additional hit point today. And then we will move our camera at that point to Lady Elisabeth and Miss Bellinger, who are combing through various volumes.
In my happy place.
I'm rather pleased that they're in English this time.
Yes. So there is a version of them that is in Italian, and it appears that a local Italian translator has translated a version of them into English. It looks like the notes here, Lady Elisabeth, say that it was at the bequest of someone. It lists a name here, but this was 15 years ago.
The translation was? Like someone commissioned the translation?
Yep. Somebody wanted it translated about 15 years ago. You don't know why, but it's there. It's listed in the liner notes. Basically, when the curator gave you the stack of books, they give you basically a piece of paper of the most recent times that they've been checked out, and it shows the way back when, right? So almost, before the Great War, they were translated in English for some reason.
Well, I don't trust that.
That's not suspicious at all.
No.
So reading through the books, what I would like is sort of an idea of how you're going to go after them. There's 4 different volumes, and it appears that they mostly cover a period of 1780 to say about 1850. And it is a history piece.
Would you like to do the first and second, and I'll do the second? Or you do the first and second, and I'll do the third and fourth?
Sounds like a plan.
Okay. So committing to this research is going to take the balance of the day, or most of the balance of the day. Given that there are 2 of you, it would take longer if there were not 2 of you. So kudos to you, Miss Bellinger, for staying and helping. Otherwise, Lady Elisabeth would be burning the midnight oil in hopes of trying to complete the task. So I would like library use rolls from the both of you.
Ooh, okay.
My favorite skill.
My skill.
Hey, 53 under 80.
57 under 66.
Okay, so we have 2 material successes. Wonderful. So that will allow you to complete the research.
Summary of findings of court-martial in French. Dated 13th September 1797, Chef de Bataillon Gaston Fusil presiding. At the inquiry into the deaths of Sergeant André Legrand and Soldat Jules Héron, the following facts were determined by the tribunal. On 9th September, Sergeant André Legrand, Corporal Marcel Lasnière, And so that's Jules Heron and Louis Cochefer from Legrand's unit were drinking at a tavern, Il Capro Ubriaco, the Drunken Goat, where they fell in with Marchietti. Witnesses present stated that Legrand was very drunk. Capro Lasnière and the two soldats went upstairs where the tavern owner also ran a brothel. Upon their return, Legrand and Marchietti had disappeared. Legrand's body was found in a nearby alley a short time later. Witnesses stated that it was common knowledge in the unit that Sergeant Legrand had acquired some valuable treasure in Paris. This item was kept in his kit. The bag had been in Legrand's possession at the tavern, but was missing when his body was found. Lasnière, Heron, and Cochefer sought Marchietti, partially to revenge their sergeant, but also to recover Legrand's treasure.
On 10 September, the three men found Marchetti drinking at Caverna de Retili, the Lizard's Cave tavern. They waited until he left, then ambushed him, stunning him and dragging him to a cul-de-sac where they sought to extract the location of the bag. Witnesses stated that Marchetti at first denied having the bag, but after being beaten, confessed that he had passed the bag and its contents to his master. Marchetti refused to reveal the name of his master, and a further beating ensued. It was at some time during this second beating that Marchetti's shirt was torn from his body. The facts from this point are unclear. Witnesses report hearing screams, followed by repeated heavy blows. The civil authorities were summoned, and upon investigation, Lasnière and Cochefer were found dazed and bleeding, along with two bodies. One was the body of Heron, who appeared from the marks around his throat to have been strangled. The other body was battered beyond recognition, but may have been the body of Marchetti. Lasnière claims that the body was that of a monster that strangled Heron before it was killed. He claimed that the subsequent damage to the body was caused by Cochefer beating it with a billet of wood. A blood-soaked billet was found at the scene. Cochefer has not been able to testify. Doctors who have examined him conclude that it is unlikely that his mind will ever return. The finding of this tribunal is that Legrand was killed by civilian Marchetti in the course of a robbery. Heron was killed by person or persons unknown. The death of Marchetti is unconfirmed.
Thank you very much. And so that clue, that sort of story comes out of these volumes. And the reason why it piques your interest is that date, 1797, those men are from Napoleon's army. And Napoleon's army links up really closely with the movements of the simulacrum. And so when the two of you, begin to decipher the story, likely you first, because of your knowledge of French, Lady Elisabeth, it becomes exceedingly, almost feverishly interesting to you. Like, okay, so he had treasure in this bag. It was never recovered. And as you go through the volumes, as you continue that night, that story is never referenced. The men are never talked about again. It's as if this report, this tribunal, this single report is the only report in the entire 4-volume set that relates to it. And usually in some of these stories, especially when they're deeply into military history, there would be further follow-up reports. There would have been preceding reports about when the officers went to get the men, what they did afterwards, when people were remanded into custody. There's none of that. It's all been removed. And so this feels like a very sanitized portion, and that makes your investigative brain sort of trigger. Like, wait, why? Where's this treasure they talked about? What happened with the bag? They said his mind went, and they don't think he'll ever recover? How did that happen? And the specific thing that pulls out to you, Miss Bellinger, is that they talk about a monster. There's monster talk here. So that's not normal.
I've seen many men turn to monsters, so...
Well, I do believe there's some pieces missing, wouldn't you say, Miss Bellinger?
Yes, there's many empty pieces of this. Lots of pieces of the puzzle missing.
Quite. I think we have some more digging to do.
I tend to agree with you, Lady Elisabeth. On that note, we will end this session, and we look forward to seeing our investigation continue in Northern Italy. We wish you the best of evenings or days, wherever you might be listening, and we look to see you again soon. Thank you and good night.